everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Jedi Way here on the Outlaw Nation channel. I am Rocha Fett, the Outlaw John Rocha here, joined as always by these two wonderful people. First up, joining me here, who may be leading her own section of Star Wars fandom here with everything that's going on with the Acolyte here, and that is the great Laura Kelly, co-host of Force Toast Pod. How are you, Laura?
I'm doing amazing, John. I'm doing amazing for a couple different reasons.
Oh.
One of them is the book Temptation of the Force. Speaking of my own little corner, this is High Republic corner here right now. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
This book, you guys, it comes out next Tuesday when we're recording this, June 11th. If you are not caught up on the High Republic, please get caught up and read it because, oh my God. Oh my God.
Can I just dive in?
Amazing. No, that's the thing. You can't just, that's the thing. You can't just dive in. You got to read the prequel. Eye of Darkness came out before. You got to read that first, at the very least. I think that there's other things you should read, but yeah, but it's so good, you guys. Oh my God.
If we could convince Laura to do a special Jedi Way episode where she goes through all the High Republic stuff, I think it would be so beneficial for everybody. Like, what would Laura Kelly recommend in terms of the chronological order that you would need to go through in order to catch up on everything High Republic?
But that's the thing. I haven't even read all of it. I mean, there's a lot of it. I'm not it's a lot to keep up with. I 100% get it. But the stuff that I have kept up with, it has my heart. What can I say?
Is it as good as Plagueis?
Oh, Jesus. Oh,
wouldn't know. And I probably won't ever know.
Oh, wow. Sad.
And joining us as always now recently, and we're so happy to have Kev back. And of course, he missed last time, unfortunately, but he is here today with his new lights in his new place, and we're excited to have him back on the show. Kevin Smets, how are you, Kev?
Good, I'm doing good. I'm happy to talk a little light side with you guys, a little light side of the Force. But when we got to get to the dark side moments, we'll talk a little dark side.
Oh, look at that. Nice.
Sorry, I'm a little excited about my light. I got a light for those podcast listeners. I got a light set up here that you can control with your phone, and I act like it's like the coolest technology ever, but it's whatever. But yeah, happy to be here. Ready to talk some Acolyte.
Boys,
and,
boys and their toys. It's all I can tell you. Boys and our toys. We love our toys for sure. But we are going to get into the Acolyte. This is a spoiler review for Acolyte episodes 1 and 2. There hasn't been that much Star Wars news, so everything's pretty much Acolyte focused. So that's what we're going to be talking about on this particular show. We're going to jump into the first 2 episodes here, Lost Found and what's the Justice? Sorry about that. Here we go, Revenge Justice. We're going to get into both of those episodes here, talk about the journey of Osha and Mae, and talk about Soul and Indira and what happened here and the mystery of it all, and get into the new characters that are popping in as well as along this journey here, and all the actors involved. So that's what's going to happen. So if you have not seen the first 2 episodes, and if you're a Star Wars fan, I have to ask why. But if you haven't, then go and watch them and then come on back and hang out with us. Or if you don't care, then stick around because we're going to spoil the heck out of this whole thing. So Laura Kelly, I go to you first. New Disney series here, new Star Wars Disney series. The Acolyte, Amanda Stenberg leading the way here. Lee Jung-jae, Carrie-Ann Moss, a bevy of other actors here. Daphne Keane being a part of this. Charlie Barnett, who's quickly becoming a lot of people's favorite. The Yord Horde is growing.
Yep.
Your thoughts overall
Not
here
mine,
on these first 2 episodes of The Acolyte?
Well, we've got the Yord Horde and we've got the Soul Patrol. And
Soul Patrol,
honestly, I'm just really enjoying the fandom having fun with it. It's been really fun to watch. There's good and bad, as there is in all things. I really like the sort of prequel feel, the sort of aesthetic. Everything's bright and colorful, and I'm enjoying that. They're taking advantage of being in the High Republic era with the gold robes. And as much as I love something like, The Mandalorian, I certainly prefer the look and feel of the Acolyte, I think, over more of the dark and gritty, the sort of post-Imperial era. I also love seeing Jedi back on my screen. It's been 9 months since Ahsoka season 1 wrapped. I've really been missing Jedi-centric stories on screen, so I'm excited for that. There's not a lot of humor, but the little bit that we've gotten, I really like. I think Yord is bringing some really funny bits to this series. I look forward to seeing more from him. And the connection that Soul and Osha have is very heartfelt and beautiful. So I'm excited to see more about their past and how things sort of evolve over this season. I am not the first person to complain about the weirdly cut and abrupt endings of these
Oh yeah.
first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
And I certainly won't be the last. I'm sure we'll get into that. But there are a few other scenes, not necessarily just at the end, where the tone change is abrupt and kind of completely throws off the pacing of a scene, and that kind of takes me out of it. So it's one of those things that I bet like works on paper fine, but the execution of it somehow didn't. And so yeah, there's a couple different things like that that kind of pop up every now and then that just sort of take me out of it. The martial arts is something I was really looking forward to in this series. The duel between Mae and Indira is really cool. For some reason, the one between Mae and Soul was not 100% there for me. Most of it worked, but some of it kind of didn't, and just kind of seemed like it was like almost hacked to death in editing. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I've only been able to watch each of the episodes twice, and my first viewing was in a theater with lots of other Star Wars fans,
right.
but also a bunch of really annoying Star Wars fans. And by a bunch, I mean 3 that were like a couple people down from me and like talked through the whole thing.
No.
So it sort of ruined my theater experience. It ruined my like first Acolyte screening. So that sucks, and there's not much I can do about it. But I certainly enjoy being able to watch on my couch by myself more without having the chattering going on. People need to have class. There is no class in theaters. Shut up. If you're going to a movie theater, please stop talking. Anyway, I would like to hear what Kevin thought. Good, bad, the ugly. Give it to us, Kevin.
Yeah.
Well, I just think I feel bad for the people working at the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They must be real freaked out about all the searches and like getting tagged in Twitter. Yeah, it was good. Like it's hard to explain, but for me, and I know it's my own fault. It's my own thing that I have to get out of my head. If something kind of ticks me off or like gets me off course, it's hard for me to recover. So the first time I watched the show, I was loving it, and my biggest positive from the show also suddenly became my biggest negative. Like my notes literally said, "This is some of the best music we've had in Star Wars." They were able to capture the John Williams vibe that Phantom Menace had. Like it feels like it could roll right into there. Right. And to largely, it's like homage to the John Williams style that he had. And he was even riffing on his own style, because the Phantom Menace, when it first came out, a lot of people said it sounded like the 10 years prior Last Crusade soundtrack. So it was like with those pronouncements and the wide shots in Naboo and Coruscant. So it was like in my notes, I was like, this is some of the best music. But then by the time it was, I kept thinking like there was moments where I was like, how are we not? We're in a show with 50 Jedi. How have we not heard the Force theme yet? Like play the Force. It doesn't need to be over the head. It's all about introducing all these new themes, which are great, but just having a little tinge of the old, right? And that Kevin Kiner does it brilliantly on Rebels. He did it on Ahsoka. That's why Ahsoka had those callbacks musically. It failed on Kenobi. Kenobi, when the director and composer said he didn't earn his theme until the end of Kenobi. Well, no, because his theme played in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. So don't even get me started on that. So when I was like, you have this treasure trove of established themes, and you don't need to hammer us over the head, but have all this new music and just thread in like the Force theme once when, he's teaching about the Force in the Jedi soul in the Jedi temple or something, or a wide shot of grand pronouncement of the Force theme would be great. And I don't understand why some of these new Disney shows refuse to even like touch. They only had to do one homage, which is the mystery theme in Attack of the Clones in the next episode. So because of that, just kind of like how those people were annoying you on the theater, it ruined. Like the first time I was like, wait, where's the? And then I was like, oh my God, this is another situation like Kenobi where like there's going to be no music. And again, you see my notes. It's like some of the best music ever, like halfway through the first episode. And then I was like, but come on, you got to embrace the new, but give homage to the past, especially when it's not like I'm asking for Anakin's theme because he's not in it. But, you have a show full of 50,000 Jedi, the Force theme just once, just thread it under somewhere. Right. So that kind of frustrated me. So my first screening, like I kind of went away with it. And see, it's my own fault though. that like I almost couldn't get back on the track, right? Because I was just like, man, it's starting to annoy me that is this going to be another repeat of Kenobi. But I will say, watching it a second time, like I really think that the acting is great. Then the cast chemistry is good, and I'm not on the Yord Horde though. I think Yord's he's like that kid he's like Hermione, but like worse. He's like the kid in school that on Friday night raised his hand and says, Professor, you forgot to give us homework for the weekend. And everybody's like, what are you doing? But I don't hate him as a character, as far as I just think he's like, I appreciate him for his character, but like I'm not on the Yord Horde. But I love Soul. No, come on. But I love Soul, and I love the chemistry with Soul and Osha, and I really do like that actress who plays Osha and Mae. So
Amanda
yeah.
Stenberg,
So like right now, it was like the first screening, I was like 6 out of 10 because it was just, and again, it's my own fault. I get thrown off, but then when I watched it again, knowing musically, and that's the funny thing though, music is one of the best parts of this show. So it could have just been just a little sweeter. So I enjoyed the first run through of it. I'm excited to see where it goes. And what do you think, Rocha? What did you think overall?
Yeah, shout out to Michael Abels, who is the composer on the show, and he did some of the Jordan Peele movies. He composed some of the Jordan Peele movies. So clearly they wanted to go with some darkness with the music and darkness with the approach. And right from the beginning, Leslie Headland, that sound cue is very ominous. And we see not an opening crawl, we see text appearing in mini paragraphs on the screen there telling us what's going on. So clearly a different approach in how they wanted to go about it. I will say this overall, I liked the first 2 episodes and I enjoyed the performances for the most part. And I thought the direction here from Leslie, I thought was good. I will say, like, I agree with Laura, like the first action sequence opening that way, that was badass. I love that. The force foo, as people are calling it. I thought it was so cool to see it in motion. And Carrie Ann doing it, like bring back all the Trinity vibes, watching her do that, which was badass. The second one, I think, was a bit off because I don't think it felt repetitive. And I think that was the mistake there. There should have been much more involved. And so maybe that's why I didn't enjoy that so much. And I will say that I think, though, at times for me, the tonal shifts are a bit too jarring. And I don't sense the stakes as heavily as I need to feel them. Like they're killing Jedi. Mae and this Kiram kid, they're killing Jedi. In essence, they're killing Master Jedi. In essence, you're killing like high-level police officers, high-level priests. You're killing cardinals. You're killing people of real huge importance who are connected to the council. So I kind of need to feel the weight that this is really scary and tough what you're doing. And there's too much of like a little more relaxed approach to everything. And I felt that was a little bit missing. Even Soul, who is so compassionate, caring, and nice, like, oh, there's no way Mae's alive. 1 minute later, Mae's alive. Oh yeah, I sense that too. And so there's just like, wait, what are the stakes here? And so I think the performances are fantastic and the chemistry of the actors is good. I just need a little more of the feeling how dangerous this is. But again, this is the first 2 episodes. This is a murder mystery. We've got more to come here in the next 6 episodes. They're going to flesh things out. So I don't want to be too harsh on it. It's just overall, I felt it was good, but I thought it had the potential to be great. And I don't feel that greatness just yet. But maybe I will by the end of the 8 episodes when I go back and rewatch it and put them all together. We shall see.
Rocha, can you go ahead and run the tape of back on a couple weeks ago when I called it, when the poster came out and the blood and the lightsaber hilt? Yeah. And I said that was Carrie Ann Moss's lightsaber hilt, I'm pretty sure, and that she's going to be dead in the first scene. Right. They're going to pull a scream with her. So you're going to just run that tape real quick. Okay.
Yeah, let me get on.
Okay, cool. We ran it so all you fans saw it. I just wanted to, I thought that was pretty interesting too.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about that scene here. We have the opening scene, the battle between them here with Mae and Master Indira, and she is killed off. I think, Laura, you speculated that as well with the trailer. You sensed we didn't see her much, so possibly she was going to be killed off. And sure enough, she was in the opening, which was really odd. You're a Master Jedi. She is, from what we find out later, she has been training, but is she better than a Master Jedi? Why can't you use 2 hands to stop 2 knives? I don't know with the Force. But your thoughts overall on the decision to kill her off and make this be the beginning of the mystery of this show.
I think the decision to kill her off works. I think that was the idea, was to sort of set up the stakes that way. But I agree with you in that I'm not really feeling the weight of those stakes that they're setting up. I think my other main complaint, at least about the first episode of this show, is that, and really kind of overall in general, is that there's not really a hook for me. Like this opening scene was great. I saw this opening scene, this duel between Mae and Indira at Celebration last year. So this wasn't new. We also saw the clip when they released it a couple of weeks ago. Right. And then we saw the fight between her and Soul. We kind of saw all of this stuff. And I sort of wish they would have held some of it back. Maybe that would have got the hook in a little bit deeper. But for me, that's one of the things that it's missing. But I do think that this opening scene was kind of funny. I mean, from the moment we say go, she's walking into this Jedi, or to this, bar. I think it's a noodle bar. And goes up to Carrie Ann Moss with such energy that I don't even know how to describe it, but it's so over the top.
Yeah.
The performance of being like, attack me. And I literally, in the theater, I think I laughed. I was like, it's just a little embarrassing. But then I'm glad that other people in the scene, the other characters in the scene, are laughing. I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't misinterpret this, because this just feels way over the top. So we're all on the same page. Beyond that, I did think it was cool. The martial arts of it, the wire work is very cool. They're jumping all over the place. I just recently, when I went back and read some of the interviews of Leslie Headland talking about how it's Kill Bill meets Frozen, I rewatched Kill Bill 1 and Frozen in the last week. And that big scene at the end of Kill Bill, where she's fighting off all of the, I don't even know what they're
crazy
called.
88s.
That's it. Yeah. It was giving a lot of that. So I enjoyed that component of it a lot. I really like this setup. This is one of those sort of High Republic little Easter eggs that they pull in. This is clearly a Jedi outpost. In the High Republic era, you've got Jedi spread all over the galaxy, and they tend to be based at these Jedi outposts. And this is clearly one of those. This must be where Indira has been posted for who knows how long, but I just it's one of those little things that they just pulled that little detail from the High Republic, and I really appreciated that. There's also the fact that this is a noodle bar. It's not a High Republic Easter egg, but for me, it kind of felt like it, because Vernestra Rose Padawan in the High Republic, Imri Canteros, is a big fan of this noodle bar in the first book or one of the first books that he's in early on. So the fact that they're starting out there also just kind of felt cute and right, and as it warmed my High Republic heart, shall we say.
Fair point. Kevin, what did you think of this opening? Did you said you predicted it? We played it, the clip clearly, as people saw. What did you think of this decision to kill her off, to be validated that you thought she was going to be killed off here early on in the series? Oh, you're muted, bud. You're muted.
It's my first time ever being on this show. I remember I was kind of lukewarm on the trailer, and so I had texted you guys. I think I did, after Phantom Menace. They played this scene at the end of it, so the first part of it anyway.
Right, and
that made me warm up a little more to the Acolyte. So I did enjoy that fight. I do like too that it seems like it's like they don't use their sabers as often back then, and what I like about that, it's cops didn't have to use guns back in 1955 Pleasantville when things were nice. I mean, they did occasionally, but compare that to Detroit during the time of RoboCop, where you know what I mean, or Chicago in the 80s, and you know what I mean. Right. So it's interesting that that it seems like it should be, except when Yord uses it as a flashlight. I hate when Jedi uses sabers as a flashlight, by the way, for some reason. But he used it as a flashlight. But I like that, it seems like that's not the first go-to move, is just to get the lightsaber out. It's let's see if we can contain this without it. Because at that point, it's largely from the opening text. It's a galaxy of peace. So
yeah. I like this as an opening. Almost felt like a James Bond opening, where you open with the action and then go to the title card, and it kind of lays the groundwork for what you're getting. And the fact that she dies, I was bummed, but I also get it storyline wise, because clearly, as we go through these first two episodes, we're going back to 16 years ago to find out what happened with these 4 Jedi, and with the Mae and with Osha. on that planet, and we're going to find out what went down that is motivating Mae to all of a sudden 16 years later seek revenge on these 4 Jedi. And of course we find out that Mae doesn't even know that Osha's still alive, and Osha doesn't know that Mae's alive until the end of the first episode, cool. And then in the end of the second episode. So we have that. So for me, you want to kind of jump a few steps. This is how you jump a few steps. You introduce this character, you show her skills fighting wise, and you show her take out a master Jedi. So clearly this is someone that is not to be messed with, I guess, is the way you want to present it. And from there you jump into the story. So I kind of liked it as a beginning. And I anticipate there's more Carrie-Anne Moss coming, because I don't think you asked her to get rid of her in the first few minutes of the first episode. So we'll see what's coming.
I feel like they're gonna have they're gonna do like what I think some of like Breaking Bad used to do it, or really like the water cooler shows. They have a crazy cliffhanger.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? And then the next week you think they're gonna pick right back up, but they do a flashback episode. So I have a feeling that we're gonna get one of the episodes will be a full flashback, hopefully, and that would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's move on to this, Kevin. Amandla Stenberg, as you were mentioning, you liked her here in this show, playing the dual role of Osha and Mae here. What did you think of her story? Where they're twins, something happened in the past, and now Osha's walked away from the Jedi Order, which was her decision. Master Indira was not essentially the one who forced her out. She wanted to go out, kind of like Ahsoka, left the Jedi Order on her own, and is a mechanic now. And on the other side, but she cares about people. She tries to save prisoners on a transport. She didn't kill Indira. Her and Soul reunite and have a reigniting of the connection and the friendship between them and the care between them. On the other side, Mae is killing off the Jedi, is frustrated in the second episode when she can't get through to that Jedi there, and essentially has him commit suicide right in front of her for whatever happened on that planet, which we still don't know about. So, and then eventually the fights, and then gets away with Kiram because they're going to go after the Wookiee Jedi there, Kilnaka. So your thoughts on this story with these two and how Amandla did, and then also the story around Mae and Osha?
Yeah, I always like a good siblings story. Like Legends, which nobody cares about anymore, but Legends used to have Jaina and Jason Solo, like the twins.
Yes.
And they end up having a final clash, brother versus twin sister. It would be like as if Leia and Luke had to, like Leia or Luke turned bad and Leia had to try to turn him back to the light side. So I love that. I like that they're going here with the twins. I like that she plays them both. You could really distinctly tell the difference, I think.
Yeah.
And so that's cool. And I always like a good old fashioned whodunit. And I thought that I like just the development of how slow we are going to get to seeing like what happened. Cause like, I feel like in the flashbacks, they're yelling at Mae that she's the one who started the fire.
Soul says that she started the fire. Yeah.
So like she started the fire. So hoping you don't get a copyright strike for that. But I do want to comment before I forget too, using my time. Laura, I agree with the sudden endings of these episodes.
Yes,
it was a thing that I complained a lot about during Andor too. Andor did it a couple times. Like you have such a brilliant show, but then all of a sudden they're just like, oh, we're just gonna end it right here. And when we get into episode 2, I had a real problem with the way they ended the second episode. But yeah, I just wanted to tell Laura I agree with you on that. But yeah, I'm excited to see where the sisters go, and I do think that Amandla, right? That's how there's an LA at the end. I think she's a great actress, and I think I'm excited to see, and I like her chemistry with Soul as well.
Yeah, I think she did better as Osha than Mae, but I've seen people say she did better as Mae than Osha. So it's all a matter of your particular subjective opinion. But I'd like Amandla Stenberg as the lead of this particular show and enjoyed what she brought to these characters. As you said, Kevin, distinctly different. What did you think, Laura, of the performance here from Amandla and the overall storyline with her as we get through these first 2 episodes?
I think she did great. I mean, I think she's doing a really good job of, we see Osha on screen and you can sort of see it in her face. Like she's a little bit more like bright-eyed and just a little bit more like kind of optimistic. Just the way that she carries herself is different. So I think she's really mastered the art of playing these 2 characters. I do question if they will both survive. It does seem like they want to do a second season of the show, and that does just sound exhausting, having to play 2 characters. Not to mention, it's probably going to end up being a lot of special effects work to have both of them on screen at the same time at some point, since there's only one of them. But I think she's doing a really great job with it. I don't know if I feel a connection to one more than the other. I don't know if she's doing better with one more than the other. I'm kind of indifferent to that at this point, but I think she's knocking it out of the park. I think this cast has really good chemistry. I think that there's just, I think some of the problems that I have with pacing and the weird abruptness and tone change of some of these scenes is not at all their fault. So I'm not sure who to blame for that, because I think they're all doing a really good job. But yeah, the relationship between her and Soul in particular is just really beautiful. I mean, that face that he makes at her, like this proud parent, where he's just got this sad smile, just shattered me. And this discussion they have about her tattoo, where he's just kind of like, what is that? But he's like, doesn't matter what I think, it's not mine. Like their relationship is great. The conversation about attachment with the Jedi and the High Republic has been an ongoing discussion since the beginning of the High Republic. They seem to sort of interpret things a little bit differently 100 years before this show is set. And it seems some things have maybe evolved a little bit, having Vernestra Rowe in charge of some things. I wonder how much she's behind some of those changes. I really would like to know a little bit more about like what's going on with the Jedi Council, who's on it, what are the attitudes about the state of the galaxy, not just the Jedi Councils, but kind of everybody's. We're very honed in on this story, which is probably good. They want us to connect with these characters. I just would be curious to know like what's sort of going on in the grander scheme of the galaxy, personally.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because that struck me too at the end. I mean, because Soul clearly knows what's going on now, wants to go to protect Kelnaka, and Vernestra, of all people, from what I understand from Michael, who also reads the High Republic stuff, Vernestra in her youth was not one to go by the book and be stringent about stuff and follow the rules. So to have her be the one as an older character, not be the one like, no, you can't go to this planet. You got to come back here. We're going to talk about the council, and then we're going to decide what happens, which of course frustrates Soul, because that's red tape. When I know what's going on, let me go to this planet to stop this from happening. So it makes me wonder that there might be some or a couple of people on the Jedi side of things who are invested in this or part of the plan here as antagonists. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But we'll see down the road. But let's talk about the overall story here. Laura, you said there's no hook, but are there any things that you can connect to within the story? Are they laying out the murder mystery in a way that you enjoy? Is the pacing an issue for you here? We talked about the contrasting of tones already, but do you sense the story itself is strong enough to keep you watching this? Obviously, we're going to watch it because we're going to review it, but like keep you interested in seeing where it's going to go. Did they do enough in the first two episodes to pique your interest to see more here going forward?
Yes and no. I think if we weren't doing these reviews and I wasn't doing them on my other show too, I would probably just wait until this show had wrapped and I'd go and watch all of it in one. I think really benefit from a binge watch format where it can be more of like in 5 or 6 hour long movie as opposed to 8 separate episodes.
Right.
But TBD. It's gotten me interested enough. I'm not going to like write it off. I'm not going to be texting you guys being like, I don't know if I want to do this week. Like I may or may not have been doing during Andor. But I think it's fine. I mean, I think the overall pacing is fine so far. I thought the first episode was a little bit slow. I bet by the end of the series, I won't be saying that. I'll probably be like, oh yeah, this is great. The pacing worked. They had to introduce everything. They had to take a little bit slower in the first one. I understand. I like the pacing in episode 2 a lot more, where we're at in this time. But overall, I think it's working. I think there are characters that I like. I like Yord. I know Kevin, if he's not really the best character, I think in your eyes, and that's fine. I think he's interesting enough to me that I want to know more. He's like a very like trigger happy cop in like the worst ways, but he's also just really awkward and kind of funny. And I love that Jecki is all about just giving him shit. Like it just is kind of funny. I didn't fully understand what their dynamic was the first time I watched these first 2 episodes, I kind of walked away from the screening being like, is this like a sibling thing? Like, do they actually like, I kind of couldn't get a read on it. It worked, I think, better on my second viewing. It just, some of those humorous bits stood out a little bit more. But I think Soul's an intriguing character. I think that Lee Jung-jae is doing a really good job with it. I was very impressed to hear that he started learning English specifically for this role. I remember at Celebration, he had a translator up on stage, and I can't remember how much English he was speaking. It may have been none. But English is such a hard language to learn. And the fact that he got up into the show and did what he did so masterfully is really admirable. So I'm enjoying his performance quite a bit, and having that extra color, knowing that extra sort of trivia behind it just makes it even more enjoyable, I think, watching his performance.
Fair point. Kevin, your thoughts on the story here? Did they lay things out in a way that you found interesting and unique? And did they do enough to keep your interest invested to see where this is going to go over the next few episodes? Yeah.
Well, real quick on the Yord thing. I think what's great about Yord is everything you need to know about him is in that scene where he like stands up and he's trying to like make his coat or his robe look good.
His robe's flashback
for Osha, and he even says like, "Oh yeah, I graduated like 2 years ago." Like he has a chip on his shoulder and something to prove, and so that aspect of him I like. I'm just like, it's very interesting you say trigger happy cop. That's a very good assessment. You know what I mean? We'll see if that comes into play later. But overall the story, yes. There's so much Star Wars lore, and I'm not even jokes aside about the Plagueis novel, that's always a fun bit, but Plagueis is a canonical character that was mentioned in Revenge of the Sith.
Yes.
Okay. So it is, we are getting, and if they're going to continue, they can make him any race if they want, of course, or alien species. And he's a moon in the books right now. And I don't know what their life expectancy is. And he had another master Tenebrous, which, to be honest, in the novel, I wasn't really into the Tenebrous, his master stuff. It's like, keep it. But once he got into Plagueis and Palpatine, it was fantastic. Yeah. I'm really hoping that this all leads to a situation at the end of the series, whether it's the end of this season or next season, that whoever is trying to be his acolyte, whether it's a lot of people are thinking maybe Qimir is the one, and we'll get to that, obviously. Yeah. Qimir is the one behind the mask, right? Saying that quote. Or they're thinking maybe the guy in the mask is Plagueis. I don't think it's that. I think that Mae and Qimir, and maybe they're even serving someone else, are going to fail whoever is really the main puppet master. And I hope that in the end you find out it is Plagueis, and he basically kills them or just gets rid of them and is like, fuck, I need to find someone better for what I need to do for my purpose, right? Cueing not saying we want to end the show with the delivery room and Palpatine is being born, but he basically, the idea at the end of the show is that Plagueis is trying to find his next apprentice, and he has these acolytes, and they just keep fucking up on him. And it's like, okay, out with this guy, out with this girl. Like, they're not doing it. I'm going to need to find someone. And so it could set the table perfectly. So then in between the Acolyte and the Phantom Menace, we realize how, that's how Palpatine starts to come rise. But I love the quote that whoever this mask guy says. He says, if you attack a Jedi with a weapon, you will fail. Steel and laser are no threat to them. You know who else thought about that? You know who else believed in that construct?
Go ahead.
Palpatine. Yeah, that's why the whole time is between the shadows and getting this army. And it's like, you're not going to beat the Jedi by the rule of two, of the two Sith squaring off against everybody, like Luke would say. You're going to square off everybody with a laser sword. It's all about deception. It's all about coming in from the shadows. So I thought that quote was really cool because that's informing Mae at this point, the overall angle of that Palpatine eventually gets, and who taught Palpatine but Plagueis. So I really do hope that this does lead to the reveal of Plagueis, but this is why you could still have that line about the millennia, because I do believe the Jedi, and we'll talk about this too, they're not above cover-ups, because it sounds like they already did a big cover-up, right? So I think that if anybody does find out their Sith are back, they're either going to cover it up, or maybe no one will know. And that's why Mae's instructed not to use a weapon. We don't want any, I know we see the red lightsaber against all those poor fools later. So I wonder how that's going to go down. But I do feel like in the end of the show, I hope that they connect it and they give that bridge to the Phantom Menace and the canonical story that Palpatine says in Revenge of the Sith that, you know, Plagueis the Wise was his master. So I'm curious about where they're going to go with that. And I love all the discourse about who could the Sith be? Who's the guy under the mask? Is it Qimir? Like, which would be a great, like a kind of Phantom Menace thing. Also, Leslie Headland her first show she pitched was for a live action Asajj Ventress show. And they liked that. They liked how dark she was going, but they wanted to go in a different era. And if you think about some of the similarities, you would have Asajj Ventress, Mae. You would have who she was under, Dooku. That would be this masked guy who we don't know who it is. And Dooku was being under Palpatine. So the rule of two is kind of, you can stretch that a little bit. In the Plagueis novel, Palpatine was grooming Maul, not necessarily to replace Plagueis, but he was grooming his own apprentice of his own, and he wouldn't quite call him the apprentice. He was just like, that was his assassin, that was his badass, right? So there are all these little things that could factor in, and I hope that this show, the whole, when you look at it as a macro, it's to establish, you know, how we get to the Phantom Menace and that story of Plagueis. If you just have some new master, you know, that's not connected to the lore, then I think that's a mistake. What do you guys think?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it all depends on I think nothing's a mistake if the execution is well done. And right now, after 2 episodes, I'm not sure how I feel if they went with a new master or they went with someone who's connected to, as you said, Plagueis and all of that, because I'm also not buying that Kirim is the guy in the mask. Like, I just don't know if I buy Mae Jacinto as this dude hanging out, dropping bars about the Jedi and how weak the Jedi can be. I just don't know if that's necessarily.
You knew the Sith code, though, bro.
I see. He did. No, he said the first line. You're right about that. Absolutely.
He played KOTOR. He played the KOTOR game.
but I think it would signal something negative for the show that if everybody figured out who the hell's under the mask, then there's no mystery.
That's the thing. This is too easy. The fact that he's sort of the main suspect at this point. Yes, that's exactly what I have in my notes, is that I think that this guy is a red herring. I think he's probably going to drop dead at some point. And it's just, we're just gonna be like, oh no, okay. It's gonna be like that character from Ahsoka all over again. Merrick, whatever his name is. Yeah.
What if it's Soul?
I don't. Yeah, I saw somebody say that too, and I'm like, I don't see it. I don't see it. And you can't do twins again because you've got you can't do that again. So he's way too pure of heart.
Let's take a quick break, and then I want to jump into that discussion because that's in the notes. So I don't want to jump the gun on that just yet. Let's take a quick break so I can put a commercial here, and then afterwards we'll jump into these theories here right after this. All right, and as a good host, I'm teasing you what we're going to be talking about.
We're talking about Darkseid now.
Yeah, so I do want to get your thoughts on the other characters in the show and how they're working, and then your thoughts on who you think might be under the mask. So as we mentioned here, Mae Jacinto as Kirim coming in the second episode here. We also have Daphne Keane here as Jecki. I think is doing a fantastic job. We have Yord in here as well. And so and of course Vernestra Rowe here, played by Rebecca Henderson, being a part of the. So what are your overall thoughts on these characters here, Kevin? And then who do you think besides Kirim could be under that mask?
I loved watching it because I love Laura as a friend, and I was excited for her in Vernestra. Like when you see it, you're just like, oh, like. I do have a question for you, Laura, about the robes, and if do you think they're going to ever decide, like, why did everybody decide, okay, let's go with more earth tones and browns instead of like the light, you know, between the High Republic era and the Phantom Menace? So I'm curious what your take is on that. But I do like the characters. I like that Laura gets to see like I just think I like when fans are rewarded for their fandom, right? And she loves the High Republic, and she got to see Vernestra, who to me is cool. Like I think she's a cool character. And I do think that Daphne Keane was great too. She almost has, like, dare I say it, like a Spock type vibe at first, like very like rigid and like, you know, like to the book and stuff like that. But then like when Osha's talking about being flexible, she kind of giggles and stuff like that. So you kind of see that desire of her wanting to have like more of like friendship bonds, right? So I really like that dynamic. What do you guys think? And Laura, what do you think about I wrote that in my notes. I'm like, well, and I'm not trying to be like a jerk about this. I'm literally wondering, like, do you think there's like a reason why they don't dress? Because the High Republic robes look awesome.
Yeah. Your thoughts, Laura, on that?
I mean, I think that the way that I've heard it described in the sense of lightsabers, because we've got like almost entirely silver lightsabers in the Galactic Civil War era and the prequel era. And in the High Republic, there's lots of gold and a lot more ornamentation on the lightsabers. And one of the things that I think people have said, or some of the official sources have said, is just that fads come and go. These trends come and go. In like real life, I suppose. And maybe that's part of it with the robes. I like to think that at some point in this 100-year period between where we are in the Acolyte and the Phantom Menace, that there is some sort of cultural reset with the Jedi. Maybe that at some point the Jedi Order tries to come down to earth a little bit. They very much 200 years before the Phantom Menace and the High Republic books, it's sort of a moment of glory for the High Republic Jedi. And they don't even really realize it until war starts to descend upon them. And I wonder maybe if we're now 100 years after that, things have started to kind of build up again, and eventually there'll just be some sort of reset where they decide we got to kind of bring this all back down to earth. That's my theory, but yeah, I don't know. But I do love seeing the gold robes. I mean, it's the opening scene where we get Yord and his Padawan walking through the hallways. I mean, those outfits straight out of the comics of the High Republic. When they released that image ahead of the show, my heart melted. I mean, I'm fully in, loved it. As funny as Yord and his uptightness is, I think in terms of some of these characters, you've got a lot of by the book Jedi. We've got Sol as a sort of by the book Jedi. You've got Vernestra, you've got Jecki, you've got Yord. These all like kind of very strictly by the book Jedi. Although Sol obviously has a little bit of Qui-Gon vibes. He seems a little bit more loosey-goosey when it comes to some things. Vernestra, I think one of you had mentioned that she was she's changed a lot. It just in the High Republic books when she's, a teenager, she was a prodigy when she was 15. She was one of the youngest Jedi to ever be knighted. And she was very much a by the book Jedi for a long period of time, took on a Padawan very young. And we've sort of seen her evolution over 2 years of novels, that she has become a little bit less that. She's a little bit more open to the things that are more unorthodox, or that she would probably have considered to be more unorthodox 2 years before. So it's interesting to see where she's ended up here in the Acolyte. I went into this knowing she's going to be different than she is in the books. I am not the same person I was 10 years ago. She's 100 years older than she was in the books. I certainly don't expect her to be the same person at all. So I don't necessarily have a problem with the fact that she's just different than what I probably would have expected. I had warning about that. It is really exciting getting to see her and to sort of, when I watched it in a theater with a bunch of other Star Wars fans, there were a lot of High Republic fans in that. And there are moments where the just like reverence and the gasp in the theater, like you could feel it. And when she first comes on the screen, that was one of those moments. So that was really special.
Great.
So then who do you think is behind the mask here? Who do you think?
That's one of the interesting things I wanted to point out is that Jodie Turner-Smith is not actually in episode 1, but she's featured in the credits. And so I wonder if that's her voice, maybe that's been like coded over. I don't know. There's no other explanation as to why she's in that, because in the episode 2 credits, she's not mentioned in those credits. And there are other people in the cast that actually appeared in the show. So I don't know. That's my theory there. But also she's got like a very elaborate hairdos in some of the images we've seen. I don't know how you're fitting a helmet over that. So I don't necessarily think that is her. Maybe like it's her voice and she's saying those words, but it's not actually the person in the mask with the red lightsaber saying them. It's her, and that person's just hanging out and Mae's just watching him from distance. I don't know. That's my theory for now.
She's Mother Anastasia, which, right? Isn't that her last name? So that's Mae and Mae and Osha's last name. So clearly she's the mom. Could this be connected overall with the daughters and the stories and the twins? And if she's behind the mask and manipulating her daughter, that would carry an insane amount of weight when we get to a final confrontation, which I assume would happen with all three of them. So that would be fascinating.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if maybe that she's got that title of the mother Anastasia, and I looked it up because I'm like, I don't know if she's old enough to really be playing like their biological mother. She's only 12 years older than Amanda Stenberg. So I don't necessarily. I have a feeling that this is kind of one of those things where just like maybe the elders of this
it's just a
coven of witches, that they maybe that's what it is. I mean, they also reference that the twin girls grew up with their mothers, and I wonder, I kind of wondered if this is just a lesbian couple, or were they actually raised by just a coven of witches, and that's what they were referring to. I don't know. I'd be curious to find out.
Good point. Well, I'm sure we will find out as the story goes along. Kevin, is there anyone else you want to speculate could be under the mask? I have one wild speculation, so I want to hear yours first, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like when you're watching it, you're like, oh, this is a wild take. Like Qimir could be in the mask, and then you see everybody online thinks it too. So you're like, oh, but yeah. So I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to guess of what it can be. I don't want them introducing too many new Sith because that's too much red tape and too many chances for it to come out to the Jedi and stuff like that. And if we're trying to keep some of these lines sacred from the Phantom Menace, for the sake of the fandom too, right? So I'm hoping it's my theory that whoever's under the mask is just a pawn and an acolyte themselves, and that there's only one Sith. But I think Leslie said in an interview when she was brought some friend of the podcast, Star Wars Explained, Molly and Alex out there, she said Sith characters, so there might be more than one Sith. So
good point.
Yeah, so maybe this guy is a Sith or girl, and then is serving a greater master, hopefully Plagueis. But I do want to say something. There's a shout out. Did you notice that? At first I was like, oh, maybe it's going to be Hoth, but that planet's actually Karlak. Which was the first appearance of Bo-Katan in the Clone Wars show. So a little nice nod to Bo-Katan there. It is funny too, because like I in my notes I was like, do we have to always label what planet we're on now? Like I think in A New Hope, Tatooine was never named by name. I don't think you hear it until Lando says it, or Luke says it at the end of Empire Strikes Back. I'll see you on Tatooine. But I know we all knew it because of the cards and the magazines and stuff like that. But I'm just saying. It's kind of funny that they have all the planets listed, like, so, like, oh, because you can get excited, like, where is this? But then they're like, oh, no, this is Olega and stuff like that. So they've been doing that since Rogue One. I think it's the new era, and it's fine. It doesn't bother me so much, but sometimes it's like, it could be cool to have it more mystery, but you don't know what that planet is. But I do want to say that I don't know who else it would be. I need to take a Barash vow to like really focus.
So, nice. Here's my nomination. I think it's Tassi Loa. I think it's Tassi Loa quietly in the background as the Padawan. She is a member of the Zigarians who were first introduced in the Clone Wars. They built their empire on the slave trade. And what could say more negative stuff than someone who was part of a race of people who built their empire on the slave trade? The Jedi Order shut down their operations years before the prequels. It could have been all the way back in the High Republic era, some people have speculated. And then during the Clone Wars, they revived their slave trade with their alliance with Count Dooku and the Separatists. So I'm just throwing out there, like with Sherlock in the series, Moriarty was like this bumbling around idiot, and you find out it actually is Moriarty. It could be a little bit of a swerve there, but it's probably not her. I just thought this would be a nice choice.
You wouldn't think that you have to worry about spoilers with that, but I just paid for a month for BritBox to watch the Sherlock show, and I think you just spoiled a big thing.
No, I'm not going to take responsibility.
No, you can't. It's not, dude. It's been out for so long. It's not your fault, but it's funny that like you would not even think, right? Like, what are the odds? I literally watched the first episode.
But you don't know who's playing Moriarty, do you? Do you know who's playing Moriarty?
I don't know. So
I didn't ruin anything for you.
I'll just look for some bumbling guy, and then I'll know that.
Every episode has a bumbling guy.
I'm not mad at all. I think it's funny.
Kevin, that show is on Hulu. You didn't need to pay for something extra.
Yeah, it's on Hulu, brother. Yeah. Oh,
What do
Sorry.
you guys think the final scene, I always like talking about this after the premiere.
Okay.
What do you think the final scene of the season would be? So in my notes, I
Ooh,
have it
missed
being
these.
Mae getting the red saber finally. Like she'll finally be presented her red saber. Like if she's a successful acolyte. It's either that or it'll be her and whoever the masked person is gets killed by Plagueis. That's my personal wish list, but I know it's a 1% chance. But what do you guys think will be the last? I always like doing it after premiere. What's the last scene going to be of this first season? Laura.
Osha dies and it brings Mae back to the light somehow.
Ooh.
I'll cry.
Soul sacrifices himself to save Mae and Osha and bring Mae back to the light. That's what I think. Because remember, he says in the second episode, I think he says to Osha, I wanted to save you both. Right. And Osha even said,
Oh, yeah.
You have nothing to feel guilty about. I forgave you a long time, or I told you that a long time ago, and you have to come to terms with it. And he says, I have, but you are still carrying around the anger and the guilt of what happened. You've got to let it go as well. And so this, which brings me like, what was okay? Well, Kevin, what do you think is going to be the final scene? And then we'll get to that other question I want to ask.
Oh, I think it'll be. I mean, yeah, you guys have swayed me on that end, but I do think maybe Mae they got to go all in and let Mae continue being bad, and maybe she kills Osha, not Osha, sorry, she kills Soul.
Yeah, maybe.
And we'll get that saber and present it to her, so then she could be like the real bad, because they're getting a lot of flack for like having Kylo Ren like redeem member, and like he was supposed to go all in on his dark side with the original script, Duel of the Fates. So I wonder if they might trick us into thinking she's gonna redeem herself. But man, I mean, she was already setting fire to villages when she was young. Man, sometimes I think if there might be a path that you cannot return from,
Well, Soul keeps trying to redeem her, right? Soul's like, have faith in Mae. If you can't have faith in Mae, have faith in me. And even in that scene at the end when he's fighting with her near the end of the second episode, he almost puts his hand out before she escapes with that dust bomb. Yeah. I think it would have. I think maybe that could be something that will play out later on. That will end up screwing Soul maybe in the long run. But what did you think about the ending, Laura? And Kevin, I want to hear your thoughts on this too. But Laura, did Osha miss on purpose? Why did she even shoot if she was going to miss? And why didn't Mae change her tune when she meets up with Qimir again, accusing him of setting her up, when she's just found out that Osha is still alive? Why did they miss an opportunity here story-wise, or did you think this worked for you, and then we'll see what happens down the road with them?
Let me start at the beginning. So the first question was, did she miss on purpose? Yes, I think she did.
Okay.
Why? I think that that was a surprising and emotional moment, and she needed some sort of outlet, and so she was just like, fire, and like just let the blaster go off. I don't know. That was kind of my theory when I watched it, questioned it, and went back and watched it again. I was like, no, I think that maybe is what happened there.
Okay.
What was the other part of the question?
What do you think is going to lead to? Why did Mae not like pause in killing the Jedi if Osha is still alive? Because clearly that's a huge deal that she's just seen her sister alive for the first time in however long, 16 years or whatever it was. Like, why does that not make her pause? Why does she go and agree to go with Qimir to get Kelnaka?
Yeah, that's a good question, because at this point she's been fighting for revenge, and
seems like
bingo, now you don't need to get revenge but I guess if the rest of their village and the rest of their family died, she's still got that hanging over her. I guess she's also probably like in too deep at this point
maybe
to get out of it. I mean, there's probably, anytime there's the dark side, there's also fear. There's probably that component, sort of, even if it's just in the back of her head, that fear of whoever she's training with or working for, probably lingering behind. But that's my theory. I don't know. What do you have thoughts on this?
Me, I think it's a bit of a stumble story-wise, that I think there should have been more with her processing that. And then Qimir is the one. I keep saying it wrong. Sorry. Kirim is the one who has to. Sorry, guys, for anybody who's upset about
it's Qimir, like Chimera, but Qimir. Yeah.
Qimir is the one that has to like bring her back to it, and that he does. But I think that scene should have extended out a little bit more, where we see her processing the trauma of her sister being alive, and Qimir saying, "Well, maybe or her saying, maybe I don't have to, I don't know what to do here. And then Qimir is the one who's like, no, they still killed your village. They killed your mom or whatever. And you've got to go or whatever happened there. Like they caused it. So like, go kill these Jedi. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more. So I thought it was a bit of a stumble story-wise. But Kevin, what do you think of these two scenes? What do you think is happening here?
I thought it was fine. I didn't really like. I think it because I wasn't really that hooked at that point anyway.
Okay.
Like I liked that the twist was that her sister didn't know.
Yeah.
But I also think like imagine like you can't really kill like you just found out your sister has been alive for 16 years. You can't shoot them, right? Like I think I think it's forgiven that she just kind of shot off on the side. So yeah.
They seem like a dyad, right? Because they like kind of like Kylo and Rey. It seems like that. One's the light, one's the dark. What is that about? Like what's that going to lead to as we get further into the series? So I have questions on that as well. I do want to say my 2 cents on Yord. I get what you guys are saying and all of that, but I do want to I want to defend Yord a little bit. Some people compare, as you said, a trigger happy cop. Some people comparing him as a kid who wants to have homework on a Friday night. Like I get where people are coming from, but I kind of saw something different, and maybe I'm off. I don't know. And I know he pulled the lightsaber out way too quickly in a number of instances, steaming his robes because I think he cares. And I think he's a kid. And we see for the first interaction with Osha there, she's like, oh my God, you finally did it. Who would have thought? So it's a bit of a left-handed compliment. So clearly Yord wasn't the smartest of the Jedi they brought in to become a part of the Jedi. So he has to work harder than everybody else. And so he takes it more seriously and he has more dedication to it. That's why he steams his robes. That's why he floats. He's bragging because he's insecure. And he probably comes from low means or low financial strata. So being selected to be part of this massive thing is a huge deal to him. The fact that he became Jedi Knight, I get it. He's arrogant, he's cocky, and he's lording his power. But when Jecki shuts him down, when she's like, well, we could do all that, or we could do this and blah, blah, blah. He doesn't get pissed off and pull out his lightsaber and insult her. He just takes the hit, right? And he's right, by the way, with not necessarily with his plan, because the plan's a bit too aggressive. But he's right that they should have come in and gotten and taken care of business instead of going the talking route. And in the end, I wonder how much of him being by the book is going to actually be an essential thing that saves them in a certain moment and redeems Yord a little bit down the road. Or if maybe Yord's going to be disillusioned when he finds out what the Jedi have been doing behind the scenes. And that could really mess him up, which could be very interesting level or color to play for that character, because Vernestra right in the beginning is telling we can't have someone who is part of our crew try to kill one of us. I mean, it's kind of a bad situation for our political enemies. So clearly there's some brand saving, for lack of a better term, going on here. What happens if Yord finds out what the Jedi have been doing? Will his opinion change completely? Whereas the other side, where he's against the Jedi.
Oh, I love that. And that gives such depth to his character too. As far as he's like you said, all of his outfits are pressed and he wants to impress everybody and he believes firmly in it. And then to find out that everything you've been working hard at is kind of a lie. All these people that are your mentors were involved in some shady business. And you guys, even the fact that, remember they said the sister, wasn't there one fact that they're like, oh, that's not in her file. Right.
Yes.
Someone says that's not in her file.
She has a twin. That's not in her file that she has a twin. Yeah.
Yeah. So see the shade, man. I don't know. Those Jedi.
Oh, this show is absolutely undressing the Jedi at the end of the High Republic era. Laura, am I wrong on that? Do you sense that they're calling into question Jedi rule at this time?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think part of this show's mission is to sort of point out that these characters weren't perfect. They weren't necessarily on the right track here. They didn't necessarily have the right mindset through any of this. I think I'd like to say that maybe they're better than they are by the time we get to the prequel era. I mean, we've fallen quite far by that point. Yeah. So I think they're a little bit higher up than that, but there's a couple of things that I think are really interesting in this time period when it comes to the Jedi Order. We've got one of the things that stood out to me about Yord is how quick he is to put his hand to his saber, to pull his lightsaber, but also he's pretty quick to use a Jedi mind trick at that point. The very first episode too. At this, I don't know where we are in terms of the ethics of Jedi mind tricks in this point in time. 100 years before in the High Republic, they're not calling it a mind trick yet. They're still calling it a mind touch. And I don't remember the exact circumstances or where it showed up, but I feel like there is some sense that it's a pretty unethical practice to pull it on an unsuspecting civilian. Jedi do use it to sort of connect to each other and to sort of get a read on people. And we actually see Soul do a little bit of that in I think the first episode too, where he's not invading somebody's mind, I think forcefully, but he's kind of using the technique just to kind of get a read. And I think that maybe is a little bit more accepted, but Yord comes in and is just right off the bat, just we're doing Jedi mind tricks. And so I wonder kind of that sort of evolution is really interesting to watch and to think about, because then naturally by the time we get to the prequels, we're using it willy-nilly. Obi-Wan Kenobi's using it on the Stormtrooper in A New Hope. There's no hesitation at all on the Jedi's, part in this. But back then, back a little bit farther back, I think it's just sort of interesting to see how they view some of these things that become normalized later on.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, because he does do that. Because Soul does it in the second episode with Mae when he has her frozen. He's like, you don't know who the person is that you're serving. You don't know your master. And she says, get out of my mind, Jedi. So clearly this is something that's known. And even Qimir, when he gets cornered by all of them, he says like, hey, don't wipe my mind like you guys do. And essentially like a Darth Revan reference. Don't wipe my mind. So clearly there is an idea of this wiping of the minds. So this is a big deal at this time. I can't believe they're not going out of their way to highlight this for a reason. This idea they can remove your memories or something. So I wonder about all that. We shall see. Laura, any other High Republic stuff we should hit on before we wrap up this review? Because I know we're over an hour now. We got to go.
Oh, no, it's all right. I just want to shout out the Jedi Vector. I'm so glad that we got to see that. It's not the exact same that we see in the High Republic era, but still extremely cool to see it. And then Kevin already shouted it out. The Barash Vow first showed up in a 2017 Vader comic named after Barash Sylvan. We see her whole story play out in the Blade comic series, which is part of Phase 2 of the High Republic. I haven't actually read those. I've read a sort of synopsis of them. I do have them. I will read them. I think it's a 4 or 5 issue miniseries. But yeah, a really interesting sort of component of Jedi, because there's just an interesting spectrum. We've got the Barash Vow, where somebody realizes a mistake and they take this vow, to atone for it. There's the next step on the sort of spectrum is Wayseekers, is when where Jedi sort of step away from the Jedi Order and they don't get their orders from the Council. They kind of go and do their own sort of thing, whether that's being a solitary monk in constant meditation or they're just following a different calling. So Wayseekers aren't really a thing by the time we get to the prequels. I'll be very curious to see if they show up in this era. But the fact that we got the Barash Vow shout out, that was another one of those moments in the theaters where there was like kind of this, cool moment. It was great. I really appreciated that.
Right on. Kevin, any final words here that you want to throw in? Anything we missed?
Yeah, 2 things. First of all, I wonder if Anakin had lived, if Vader had lived, if they would have made him like, all right, you need to cool down and do the Barrage Vow for like 50 years while everybody forgets that you
good
killed
luck
all those people. Curious about that. My only other thing, and I wanted, now that we're talking about, we're wrapping it up, is I just think, do you remember the movie First Blood, Rocha? Of course you do.
We just
remember how scary they made John Rambo in the woods when the cops were like hunting him?
Yeah.
Why do you reveal the first live action Jedi Wookiee of all time in some throwaway scene with 2 scavengers that just get scared off, and he just scares it like, get off my lawn, Gran Torino of Wookiees, and then that just ends the episode abruptly. Like, I don't know where they're going with it, but I assume that our heroes are going to catch up with Kelnaka and find him. And what a way they could have introduced him in the next episode with, you're in the woods, you're in his, it's not quite Kashyyyk, but like it's Kelnaka's like safe space, right? You could have had this really creepy, like haunting, like he's here, he's there, he's using Jedi mind shit and like moving things over and before you finally they calm him down and they realize they're on the same team. I just thought I was so excited. They kept mentioning him. And it's like, well, cool. And now the last scene of the episode, you're using that as the hook to get on to the next episode. it just didn't feel like it felt like that was that could have been the beginning of a new episode. But also, why are we? It kind of reminds me of that. Like, why are we? Sometimes they always. I remember in film school, it's like, and I'm not trying to say I could do it better because look, I'm obviously not. I'm not making Star Wars movies except KOTOR stuff.
Well,
but
you are making KOTOR.
I know, but come on. I mean.
Yeah,
I just feel like sometimes for some of these big reveals, you want to discover it along with your protagonist, right? And just to cut away to a random scene. There's a great video on YouTube called How Star Wars Was Saved in the Edit. And it's not exactly the same thing. But if you see how the first assembly cut was before Marsha Lucas came in there and started rearranging scenes, like A New Hope would have been a vastly different feel in that first 15 minutes to where maybe a lot of people would have just been like, dude, it's not for me. And just the picking of the orders of scenes. And it just baffles me about the way that they bring in the first ever Wookiee Jedi live action Wookiee Jedi, not obviously from the Clone Wars and stuff. I just like, how do you not have this cool scene like in First Blood where like he's stalking them and trying to figure out who they are and has traps and stuff like that? And I'm not trying to make him out to be a villain, but like, they're all in hiding and they all did some messed up shit. So it was just weird that it was like, oh, we have very last scene. You meet these two scavengers, which I thought it was cool. They were speaking Huttese, like you can. It's cool. It reminded me. I love that. I love Huttese, but and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, hey, get off my lawn, and then it's just the last scene of the episode. That must have been weird in the theater, right? You got to see 2 episodes, Laura. So like the last scene, and you're in a theater, and all of a sudden the last shot is just the backside of a Wookiee going back into his home after he got rid of the angry neighbors, right? Like. I thought that was an off for me. That was my only main negatives were the introduction of Kalnaka and then the lack of classic themes. But what do you think about that ending of the second episode, Laura?
They were both weird endings. I think after the first one, I literally said out loud, "Oh, when the credits just came up, I was like,
you're not supposed to talk in the theater, Laura. You're mad."
One syllable, Kevin.
Okay.
I was talking the whole time. The whole time they were talking. That was really abrupt. I didn't necessarily, I don't know if I was that put off by it. As not as much as you are, but I totally understand why. It is these abrupt endings are just a weird choice. It's just strange. I don't understand it. I get wanting to set up and do a little tease, do a little cliffhanger for your next episode. I understand it, but it's just very weirdly executed, to be honest. So I get it, but it was strange in the theater for both episode 1 and 2, just to be like, that's it. Oh, that's it. Okay. That's awesome.
I put it in the camp of my overall criticism, which is the radical shifting in tones. And so that ending is a shift in tone, right? Because you're essentially going to a comedic ending. Because those two guys walking in speaking Huttese, they look like buffoons. And then homie shows up, and Michael compared it from the Geek Buddies, compared it to the Shrek. Get out of my swamp, get out of my swamp. And I was like, yeah, that's 100% right. Because he uses the Force, no problem, to take their weapon, snap it in two, and scream at them, and they run off. So it was a comical ending, and you're like, is that the way you want to introduce the first live action Wookiee in this comical back and forth that feels like Shrek? Yeah, no, not the smartest move necessarily when you say it, Kevin. But the whole first 2 episodes had set me up because of these jarring tonal shifts that I was like, oh, okay. It didn't bother me as much because they had been doing it through the first 2 episodes. But you're right. In the vacuum, if I'd seen it that way and expected a bit more from it, I would have been more upset about this first introduction. It should have been much more badass. And it should have left us with a feeling this is a formidable Jedi more than a comical back and forth with 2 buffoons. So,
and I'll just say what they could, the way to solve it is like the end of episode 1. And again, I'm not saying I could do it better, but the way to solve it is the shot of him saying the Sith stuff about kill the dream, then cut back to a shot of Mae, like yes, or nodding her head, then cut to a wide shot, go wide, like the end of The Force Awakens, have a rising build, then cut to the credits. All you need to do as an editor, all you need to do is add a few extra shots and a riser to do it. You know what I mean? And so, for instance, even in this one, like, even though I think tone-wise you're right, it's like off, but like he's like, and he goes into his thing and you slam the door, and then you could just slowly like start widening out and going wider and wider and realizing he's a little small hut in a giant giant forest. So we know how our hero's going to find him, and like there are ways to extend it in the edit, and it just seems like they're like, oh, pencils down, oh, okay, I gotta fill out the rest of my Scantron. I don't know if they still do that. I'm aging myself, but gotta fill out the rest of my test. So
Scantron, I love it.
sorry, I'm
Always-
as grumpy as Kel Naka right now about that. Ending. Get
Always
off my lawn.
Always answer C. Always answer C.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But and I do want to add one last thing. The second fight, and Laura, you mentioned this way earlier in the show. I feel this way too. The problem I had with the second episode with Mae is that she uses the kid to get in, and then she's able to get in and out, no problem, from that temple from the roof. Like consistently, like, oh, why did you even use the kit? You should just did a little recon. You see the opening, and we could have jumped in and out, no problem. But when she has the fight with Soul, it is so repetitive, the fight with Indira. And I think the problem was, if you want to show how formidable this person is, have all three of them attack her at the same time. And she's able to fight them off, leveling up in certain ways, taking advantage of Yord's aggressiveness, Jecki's inexperience, which is Soul highlights by saying, I didn't want this to be your first mission, but this is your first mission. And then Soul's caring for those two. That's what you can use. So you show that she's much more formidable. You deliver a much more badass scene that has levels to it in terms of where they're fighting. And then the dust bomb or sand bomb could still work, but it's done in a way that's much more effective and powerful than what you saw in the show. So little tweaks editing wise, you said, Kevin, I think could have helped these shows to have a little bit more oomph, these episodes rather, a little more oomph. I don't know if I'm off base on that, but yeah, that's my thoughts.
Fair enough.
All right, there we go. That's our spoiler review of the first two episodes. We've gone way over an hour. Sorry, everybody, but thank you very much for hanging out with us as we discussed this. Clearly, there was a lot to get into here with this, and we'll be coming back every week to talk about these episodes and other Star Wars news as well. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Kevin, where can people find you and everything going on? Thanks again, brother, for hanging out with us. Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
look, it's the end, and look at voice activated. Blah 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 blah. It talks. So see that? It's like a party. It's a party over here. It's a party for the Acolyte. All right, I'll stop that. I know I'm annoying with it. It won't be like this every week. Maybe like for the next 5 weeks, but then it won't be.
There you go.
Yeah, there it is. My daughter, by the way, loves it, and just can we play with the lights? So yeah, you can find me at Kev Smets on Twitter, and also with this new setup, I'm gonna start doing a lot. I tweeted about it. I'm gonna start doing a lot more content for stuff that's outside the Star Wars space for cancer survivors. I myself am a cancer survivor, so I'm gonna start doing some videos about that, and hopefully get going with that. And also, I'm gonna do a lot on our Discord, getting a lot of questions for our upcoming KOTOR crossover movie. So I actually had them while I'm gonna still have this set up. I gotta go get back to work for a little bit, but later tonight I'm gonna record a quick 15-minute video and kind of run through some of the big questions that people have asked. So other than that, I missed you guys. When you miss an episode, especially when we're off. When we're not covering a show, if you miss one, then I don't see you guys for a month. So I'm glad that we're back to a weekly thing, at least for the show, because I missed you guys, and I am really excited for the High Republic stuff, and it's cool to get the visuals of this, and maybe I'll start delving into reading about a bit about it, especially hearing Laura's excitement for this newest novel. So
yeah, for sure.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Kevin. You can follow him at Kevin Smets, and Laura Kelly. Another fun episode with you. Thanks so much. Your High Republic knowledge is going to be invaluable as we break this series down as we go along. Please let people know where they can find you and everything going on.
Sure, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @shutup_Laura. I did post a non-spoiler review of Temptation of the Force on both places, Twitter and Instagram, so you can find that there if you are interested in learning more. At the very end of that, there is recommended and prerequisite reading listed out. So scroll to the end and just check that out if you want to know where to start, if you want to get into Temptation of the Force. I'm going to be talking about that book in quite a few places. One of them is the podcast Now This Is Lit, the Star Wars book podcast. I'm going to be talking with Sal at Rogue Rebels, and I'm going to be on Jam Transmissions talking about this book because I love it and because people asked, and I can't turn down an opportunity to just scream into the ether about how much I love this novel. So I'll post all of those when they become available. Those, at least one of those conversations definitely had spoilers in it, so it'll be a little while because, again, that book doesn't come out till June 11th, but I'm just really excited. So I'm excited to talk about it.
There you go. There you go. Definitely hear Laura talk about all this stuff. She's so great at breaking these things down. And we've had off-camera conversations that have been fun to talk about with those books as well. So there you go. As for me, you can follow me at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, The Outlaw Nation on Twitch. Subscribe down below and hit that bell button so you're jumping all the content. And definitely leave us your thoughts on everything going on in these 2 episodes. What did we miss? What did we catch? What do you agree on? What do you not agree on? What are your thoughts? Who's up behind that mask? Who's in charge of this whole thing in terms of the negative, in terms of the Sith leader? What are your thoughts on all of it? We want to hear from all of you. Keep it civil, keep it respectful. I will absolutely hide you from the channel or delete your comment if you're toxic, and you'll get a momentary victory. That'll mean nothing in the end. So please don't do that. We love to have legitimate conversations. Our fandom is so great. They love to talk about this stuff. So come in there with the right attitude, and you'll have fun conversations about everything to do with the Acolyte. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time with another. Oh, no. And before we go, Laura, what do we have to tell them?
You got a soul quote, right?
Always remember, your focus determines your reality.
There you go. Take care, everybody. Peace.